New moon is coming up soon, and I wanted to show you how I work with the new moon for myself. I will leave the big planetary events to others. I like to use astrology for my own daily purposes. And so what I usually do, and this happens once a month, so you might be tempted to say, well, what's the big deal once a month? And it's true, if you don't do this month, you can just work with the new moon next month. But here's the thing. The new moon is the time when your subconscious sets up the new intent for the month, for the next quarter, for the year. And so you can approach it consciously, or you can just forget it, and your subconscious will do what your subconscious does. So in a sense, it boils down to, do you want to set up conscious intent and take control of your life and your decisions, or do you just want to continue on cruise control the way you have been for a long time? So if you're curious and if you want to try something more intentional, here's what you do. During new moon, the focus of our rational and conscious self, which is the sun, is next to the moon, which is the focus of the irrational subconscious. So the two have their monthly check-in. Some energy flows in back and forth, and they set up the tone for the next month at least. You can approach that consciously, or you can just, again, continue cruising. But if you decide on a conscious approach, what can you do? Now, you can set up a lot of intent, but you know, I want this, I want that, I want $1 million, and I want to win the lottery. But there's an art and technique to this process, because first of all, your subconscious has to be 100% on it. If you say, oh, I'm just gonna sit and intend, make an intent for $1 million, and your subconscious says, really? Do you really think you can do that? So there's the subtle sabotage. You have to set up intents that feel doable, practical, possible, that actually are exciting, that do not invoke any doubts or even sense of dread or wondering if this could happen. And sometimes you think you might be excited. For instance, for me, I have said sometimes in the past, I want to have my YouTube videos to be discovered by many people. But then the subconscious comes in and says, yeah, but what about the trolls? So you see, that is the part. You have to align those two parts. Otherwise, the intent is not going to work. At least your conscious intent. The subconscious intent comes from your subconscious, and there you're rarely in control. So besides, your subconscious always listens throughout the month, all your desires, pays attention to where your attention is, your desires. So you can sit for every day for 1 hour and meditate how you want the world peace. But if you spend the other 23 hours arguing with people, hating this, hating that, that's what it's gonna hear, and it's going to continue to create validation of that. It's almost like, oh, that's what you want to see in the world. Well, let me validate it for you. So the new moon is the time when you actually can take the reins into this process, and it's going to be gradual, so keep your expectations realistic. And this is why astrology can help a lot. So mark the next new moon and set the 3 days around that day for being extra conscious and careful about what you think. So be very careful and selective with your attention. Stay away from the news for those 3 days. If you can avoid conflict at work or family or friends, whatever, stay away from those 3 days. Do things only that please you, peaceful. If nothing else, just go out in the park, or if you live nearby a lake or river, walk up and down the bank, listen to music, give yourself a nice treat, whatever you like. So the new moon is not about eating, but the point is, like, you're supposed to get yourself into this relaxed, positive, optimistic state Next, astrology can help you a lot, because what you can do is you can look at where the new moon happens. For instance, for this next upcoming new moon, it happens in 24 Gemini. So Gemini is an air sign, and it's the mutable air that actually is very curious. It makes us open to learning new skills, to tell stories, to learn new stories, so there's a lot of that information going back and forth, back and forth. So what that means is that if you decide to set up an intent, the best thing is to make it stick, is to come up with something that aligns with Gemini. So don't go and say, I'm gonna declutter my house. Gemini doesn't care for decluttering, but you can say, hey, maybe I'll just watch YouTube videos and I'll learn how to doodle or draw stick figures. That's one of my intents anyway. So you see, you have to think in terms of air, and not just any air. Libra would be more related to people or harmony, blending of colors, or hanging out with people, getting along. The other air element would be Aquarius, and that'll be more tinkering, experimenting. But Gemini is very much into going places, learning skills, communicating, telling things. So it could be something with your speaking, with your talking, a way of communication, or it could be something with the way you're learning. Is there something that you wanted to learn? This is the time. So this is the first step. You notice that it is in Gemini. The next step is to notice that it's 24. So the 24 degree of Gemini will actually lock in through a numeric resonance with any of the 24 degrees of the other signs. And if those degrees are sensitive or meaningful to you, extra meaningful to you, there will be a flow of energy and interaction between those points of focus in your life and the new moon in 24 Gemini. So your next step is to look through your chart and say, okay, do I have anything in 24? For me, for instance, I have 24 Libra. That is where Uranus was at the time of my birth. That is actually a generational position, which means if you are born somewhere between 1970s and 1975, chances are Uranus was somewhere there. It might not be exactly 24. It could be 23, 25. But again, we're working here with the tolerance. The astrologers don't say tolerance, they say orbs. And when they talk about the sun has the largest orb just because it's the largest body and the largest influence, but the moon also has a very large influence and orb. So it's safe to say that if you find anything within 5 degrees left or right, so anywhere between 19 degrees and 29 degrees, most likely it will connect with that new moon in 24 Gemini. And so because of that, I will pay attention not only to Uranus in my chart, but also to my ascendant, which is in 27 Libra. And in fact, they're bundled in my life, so I can't really disentangle them. To me, they're always one big bundle there. Uranian qualities coloring my ascendant, the way I present myself to the world. So that is actually going to be active during the new moon, the upcoming new moon. I also have planets in 19 Cancer and 19 Pisces. So that adds 2 more planets, 2 more focal points into the whole melee, if you wish to call it that way. And this is when things get a little bit more complicated, but at the same time it's exciting, because you can keep it simple if you wish. You can say, okay, what does it mean to have something involved for my ascendant with my new moon? So my intention will be, remember, something about speaking and communication. So I'll say, okay, how about I present myself better? I can speak better, I can hone in my message, I can make it more interesting. Remember, notice I'm not going with powerful message. That will be a connection to Pluto. I'm going with interesting and new and original message, because that is how the message and my intent links to Uranus. Uranus is the symbol of new, novelty, originality, and surprise. And so maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised into finding new ways to send my messages or to communicate my messages. The planets in the 19, Cancer and Pisces, are actually Venus and the Moon. And so here I can add more. Cancer and Pisces, both are water signs, so I can link my new intent for communication, for a new original message that is much more fine-tuned and honed, but it's message of healing, because water is about healing, about reaching down and forgiving you memories or healing you memories of trauma. And so you see how you start building on top. You start with something simple, the new moon, and then you look around your chart and determine what you can actually do and how you can fine-tune your intent for the month. Because the more you fine-tune, the more likely it's gonna be pleasing to your subconscious. Remember, you want to come up with an intent that sounds exciting and doable and possible, and you say, yes, I can do that. If you honestly in your heart feel like excitement, this like trepidation and little thrill of like, yes, and you almost, the feeling is like, of course, the feeling is of, it feels like natural. It almost feels like I don't even have to make any effort. Don't I already have that in my life? If you hit that sense and that feeling, that means the doors are open. That intent is going, and the subconscious is gonna take it and run with it. If any of the other feelings of like, all right, well, maybe could I, that means there's some closed doors in your subconsciousness. Don't give up on it. You always start with little, and then there's another month, and there's another month, and there's another month. And so if it feels too complicated, you always have the option. And so I'll give you 3 options here. Well, the first one is the one that I just walked you through. You can find your chart and you can walk through the steps and you can figure out what this 24 degrees of Gemini new moon is going to do for you, and then come up with your own intent. I have also worked with some people who say, I'm too busy, can I just pay you and do it for me? Well, I can't do it for you, but we can have a session and conversation, and then I can actually coach you to help you. You know, I could put the guardrails and guide you in the directions, and I can create that field where you can create your own intent. Or you can actually pay an astrologer and they will do a reading for you. It's up to you. This becomes really a matter of personal preference. And the last option I created, which I thought I did really because I pictured what I would like for myself if I were in your position, and I wanted something in between. Is there something that is not like the expensive 1 hour one-to-one for someone to do my reading, but I don't want to be going in circles and chasing my tails all by myself? And so you actually have an option, and twice a month I offer I call them lab classes, which are very interactive. So you can pop in, bring your question, ask, and I'll give you the answers. And then you can just go ahead and continue searching and creating your own answers. I created that based on my 20 years of work with students, and the lab classes were always the best. So I actually keep them intentionally small. And if that really is something that sounds appealing to you, I'll put some resources in the description. But in the meantime, I don't want to make you feel that you can't do it by yourself. That's what I did. I learned to do it by myself by simply tinkering and trying every month and adjusting. And again, the most important thing, remember those 3 days, keep them quiet, keep them positive. And even if you lapse, because it's very difficult nowadays with the world, even if you lapse, don't give up on it. You can just say, oops, I made a mistake, I changed my mind, I'm gonna go back to peace. So it's the being very intentional about wanting peace it makes such a big impact versus just giving up and saying, that's it, whatever. Because in the end of the day, you really have 2 options. You can either be conscious and intentional about setting up the directions in your life, or you can just let your subconscious dictate it as it has always done in the past.